Hi, this is Graham Clark of Quba, and welcome to the second in our series of advanced CX techniques, specifically focused on the science of retaining customers in the financial services industry. And one of the key topics that we'll talk about is this evolving world of customer journey management. As we see the world of CX evolving, we see that CX professionals are increasingly moving from the world of customer journey mapping that we have all enjoyed for many years into this world of customer journey management, which is one of the key components of the next evolution of CX. Just a couple of administrative points. There's a handout which is in the little handouts box of the GoToWebinar administration panel, if you can find that. If you can't, don't worry about it. We'll send that out following this webinar by email. We'll also send the slideware and a link to the recording. And then during the webinar, we're going to have a poll. We've done some surveying of kind of the key top 5 elements, business imperatives associated with CX today, and we're going to ask you to pick your top 2 so that we can get that. And then that poll is going to continue into the post-webinar poll of folks who registered but did not attend, and then people who expressed an interest but did not register. And so we'll continue to build that information for you as the leaders in the CX industry who are gathered here today. Also, if you want to join the journey, hashtag join the journey or at Quba CX. You can comment on, communicate both during this webinar and on an ongoing basis through social media. We really appreciate your feedback. We are CX missionaries and CX professionals at heart, and so voice of the customer is everything to us. So if you can, you provide us input, you provide us feedback, we'd be delighted to hear that. So today, again, my name is Graham Clark. I lead the CX transformation team for Quba here in North America, and I will be introducing the concept of retention science and some of the basic concepts and basic principles that undermine that. And then Trent Rossini, who's the Chief Operating Officer of Quba, will be showing you more detail about how that science really works and how that science is enabled by Quba's next generation platform. And just as a comment, so feel free to contact us. As I said, we're going to push out a bunch of information. Our mission is to make you self-sufficient as CX leaders. But feel free to reach out to us about how you can win your customer retention war in your particular business. So let's start, right? So the underlying principle, which is basic for everybody, but always worth repeating, is that today's customer is in charge. One of the big changes we've seen in the last 10, 15, 20 years is really this move. And I love this slide. I'll give credit. I actually was given this by a leader at BMO in Canada. But it's a great slide. So people's personal needs and wants and expectations are ultimately driving what they want and what they do. And so, as you can see, they've got a nice sidewalk to go around this tree. Everybody takes their own path across it. And what's even funnier is if you look at the lady walking through, she's not even using the well-worn path. She's trampling through the bushes, which is a lot like we see our customers behaving in our experiences today across our clients. So their personal needs are being driven by technology capability, which changes every day. Every year, Apple and Samsung and other technology providers announce new products. We see leaders in the digital industry using products in a different way, and that changes our customers' expectations of us and really raises their awareness of the possible. So what is it that they can do? And then, of course, we all have to react to competitive capability, right? So our competitors do things. Immediately, people come to us and say, "Why can't you? Why can't you?" And we see this in the financial services industry as much, if not more, than any other industry. And no matter what we might want our customers to do, we have to do what our customers want them to do. And so when we think about that as a concept and we think about what CX professionals are focused on, one of the areas which is a constant area of fascination is this issue of focusing on the business driver, the business imperative of acquisition versus focusing on retention. So there's a lot of data out there over the last 10, 20, 30 years, but we pretty much agree that it costs 5 times as much to attract a new customer than to keep an existing one. And the probability of selling to an existing customer is 60 to 70%, while the probability of selling to a new customer is 5 to 20%. And I would argue that's after they become a new customer. And given the fact that response rates to digital marketing are in the points of a percent often, and so on and so forth, when you actually look at the probability of selling to an identified individual who's not even close to becoming a customer, that's often fractions of a percentage. However, when we look across all industries, and especially in financial services, we see that 44% of companies declare that they have a greater focus on acquisition, while only 18% actually declare that they have a greater focus on retention than the other processes, which is kind of stunning when you look at the return on investment and you look on the likelihood of bringing a customer. We've all seen industries that have suffered greatly from this. I was in the U.S. telecommunications industry for many years, where the wireless providers spent a lot of time actually incenting all their customers to leave every 2 years in order to get a new phone, and they wouldn't give you a new phone if you were an existing customer, which was just a little bit crazy, and they've pretty much actually evolved from that situation today. And so when you look at that information, you have to ask the question, why does acquisition get all the love in organizations? They certainly yield faster, more measurable results. Specifically on return of investment, there's been a lot of work in return on marketing investment, ROMI, and other areas. Whereas customer retention is in many senses more complicated. It's driving value over time, based on behavior and spending habits in this frenzied world of changing customer experience expectations. And it requires a lot more advanced technology than simple marketing and sales focused acquisition campaigns. I probably just annoyed a lot of people by using the word simple marketing and acquisition campaigns. Obviously, there's nothing simple about it. But the foundation of customer retention is fundamentally knowing what your customers want, providing a personalized experience, and evolving that personalized experience over time as your relationship with those customers changes and as their expectations evolve. That relies on data underpinning that and the ability to truly know those customers. So when we step back for a little bit and we look at the conversations we have with C-suite executives who are really increasingly focused on this world of customer experience and what they can get from it, they all agree these days about the fact that customer experience is conceptually important. And that's been a long road over the last 15, 20 years. If you peg this movement back to Bain's launch of the loyalty effect and net promoter score in 1996, spinning it out as SAP metrics, et cetera, et cetera. Today, most C-suite executives will tell you this is important. Most of the big research organizations have given some pretty solid testimony and data showing why. Forrester, with the fact that the average CX leader sees revenue growth of 17% over 5 years compared to just 3% for laggards in their industry. That's a 5x performance. The Bain's information around companies that excel in customer experience, perform 4 to 8% above market norms because of stronger loyalty promoters who buy more, et cetera. And even some of the technology companies like Sitecore with their partner Avanade, really coming down to the fact that for every dollar you spend on developing customer experience strategy, you're seeing a 3x return on that. However, there's a problem for us as CX professionals, and that is they have tremendous difficulty with how CX investments deliver systematic, reliable, and predictable ROI or results in their business. And one of the reasons for that, we believe, is because that for many years, CX has been more of an art than a science. It's been more about intuitively doing the right thing and getting good results, but not necessarily able to do that in a deliberate, systematic, predictable, and repeatable way. And executives find it difficult to understand how they can get return on their investments, even though they are increasingly putting more and more money into CX initiatives. So we created, and this is a little bit of an eye chart, so don't worry about that because you will get it, so you don't have to feverishly take notes. We basically have taken the information that we've learned from companies across the world, especially in financial services, and we've kind of upgraded and revised what we see as the traditional CX maturity model. There's a number of maturity models out there. I'm sure you've seen some of them. But we really see the maturity model itself has matured in order to meet this C-suite ask. And we put as level one traditional CX. And level one is manual personas and journey maps, maybe using Excel spreadsheets and some other tools, doing occasional research, voice of the customer, relationship and transactional surveys, some simple CX metrics, et cetera, et cetera. Level 2 is about making that descriptive, measured, and managed. So automating the descriptive techniques, bringing enhanced metrics, frameworks, and architectures strongly aligned with business measures like retention, and we'll talk about that in a second. Figuring out how to make this move from customer journey mapping to customer journey management and customer experience management, and then expanding your use of CX and CX understanding to encompass many, if not all or most, of your segments, personas, journeys, and products, and really seeing CX as critical to the business. From there, the next step is really making it predictive and systematic. So those descriptive automated techniques become informative. Probably the term you'll hear a lot, and Trent will talk a little bit about later, that's really catching fire right now in the CX industry is this idea of journey analytics. How can you use journey analytics to inform, upgrade, evolve, and improve your customer journey maps and your understanding of your customer and your customer behaviors? Really tightening the integration of CX metrics and business actions so that you can clearly understand if you move this metric, if you move satisfaction, if you move net promoter score, if you move something else, what's going to move in your business, revenue, profitability, competitive positioning. And seeing CX as a discipline become more important and more expansive. And then level 4, which we're just starting to see the very earliest stages of, is how do we then start applying some of the advanced technologies that we're seeing across many different disciplines and many different industries get applied to CX, specifically using artificial intelligence and machine learning to make it prescriptive and intelligent, and also bringing more and more agile techniques into your CX operating model, your business operating model, to become better and better and better over time. And we know, by the way, intuitively, that the folks that people love to talk about, the Amazons, the Expedias, et cetera, do this today, and they do most of it today, and they're often moving. And so for most regular folks, normal companies, their job is to figure out where they are and figure out how to move forward pretty quickly, and how to move from CX as a discipline being an art to CX as a repeatable, predictable science, as CX itself becomes more important, higher impact, and ever more complex in the organizations. So when we look at that maturity, and again, you can get that, you'll get that information following this webinar. Here's a simple case, right? This is a little anonymized, based on some work that we did recently. It's a division of a company, $225 million a year, 500,000 customers in this particular product line, $37.50 per month in customer revenue, which doesn't sound like a lot, but is not that atypical when you look at financial services businesses. They're actually a small business service organization, and their average customer life was 6.5 years, which basically means 15% of their customers leave every year. That 15% attrition represents a $34 million revenue or $17 million margin problem or retention opportunity. And their new VP of CX proposed transforming their retention system to deliver a 10% reduction in attrition. So it's basically 10% of the 15% or 1.5% of their customers being reduced, and was able to guarantee an annual benefit of $5 million in revenue and $3 million in gross margin. And we can send you the details of how that formula actually works if you want us to. But even saying that, she still could not get the executive investment board on board. So she really distilled it down into something really simple, and that is that what it actually required is reducing daily customer churns by just 24 customers of 240 daily leaves that constitute the 15% of customers leaving each year across, by the way, I think it was a 320-day working year. They work 6 days a week. They probably should do 7 because they have web access and contact center access at 7 by 24. But she classified the actions they needed to take into preventative actions that would, they can systematically identify things that would stop people leaving or cause people to leave. Some proactive actions where they looked at the journey that those customers were taking, and they identified, when a customer starts to behave this way, it means they're heading out the door, and we need to get involved early. And then engaged recoveries, which is really what do they do when the customer sends in their I'm out of here notice. And so they identified those sets of activities, and basically in order to do that, in order to activate this, they had a 3-year investment recommendation of $2.4 million, $1.2 million over a 14-month project, and then $400,000 per year in ongoing software subscriptions and personnel. And because they use cloud software, Quba, they're able to drive really fast benefits, which was very important to them, and see the first benefits within 120 days, a 9-month project cash break even, that first 1.2 million against the first year's benefit. And basically, once they've spent the money on the project, they're looking at a massive 6 weeks of ongoing cash break even in ongoing years. And they basically made the joke that, I forget what the term is in the United States, you work until the beginning of March in order to pay the tax man before you work for yourself, so they do better than that. And in addition to that, their corporate risk management group, which is a very powerful group, basically said they believe there was a 90% likelihood of exceeding the benefit by more than 100% or doubling it, because number one, the 1.5% we considered to be a pretty low bar. Number two is they felt like happier customers would buy more stuff so they could upsell them, and also the customers would refer other customers, and they have a pretty sizable acquisition cost in their business, which gets slashed if they can get customer referrals rather than having to go out and manage those. And then we also know that happy customers cost less to service on an ongoing basis versus their revenue. So when we think about this science thing, the good news is this is nothing novel. It isn't like we created this like a brilliant idea. The business case around retention is pretty clear, and as I said, we can send you more information if you want to develop your own. The question is, how do you get that benefit, right? Back to the C-suite problem, how do you get that benefit and actually do so reliably and predictably? So we created a 7-step scientific model of CX, and then what I'll do is quickly talk through how this applies to retention, and then we'll do our quick poll, and I'll hand it over to Trent to show us how some of this works in action and how this can work for you in action. So the 7 steps, again, not particularly revolutionary, right? The first one is know your customer. Second one is know your business. Deliver the right customer experience for those customers. Measure it, especially its correlation to business impact. Analyze that measurement for continued understanding and to drive you to action, act, and then continuously improve. Really make sure you know your customer and specifically what drives this digital first but not digital only multi-channel customer of today to stay or go in your particular business. Secondarily is you obviously have to know your business, right? So how does your business align with your customers' needs, wants, and expectations? And how does your operating model, your people, your processes, your products, your services, your information, your technology basically deliver on those customer needs? And what are the important business metrics that you really look to track, like retention, and how does their experience relate to that? So in most businesses, we're increasingly seeing data-driven correlation between very specific things that we do as businesses to our customers versus what our competitors do to our customers that ultimately provide a pretty high level of predictability around staying and going. And then obviously, where the rubber meets the road, deliver the right experience, right? You've got to deliver a personalized experience to your customers through the channels they want, in the way they want it, experiences that are easy, effective, emotionally resident, and specifically understanding how those relate to retaining the customer or the customer leaving. And then we get into things that are increasingly relatively easy to do, but have always been very difficult. So measuring the customer experience and its correlation to business impact. So, not just a voice of the customer survey once a year in terms of their relationship, not just transactional surveys that say, how did this go? But bringing voice of analytics in so that you look at your digital sensing, you look at your web, mobile, you look at social media conversations, you do sentiment analysis of emails that you receive, web forms, conversations, in order to bring a true view of your customer to you in all the channels that they touch you, and also bringing in other things very important in financial services, especially the case study we talked about, voice of the partner. So they're a very partner-enabled business, and so they have to take into account their intermediaries that actually sell and service their products in order to be successful. And voice of the employee. We all know, happy employees beget happy customers, or probably more importantly, unhappy employees beget unhappy customers. And in that measurement and understanding, Journey Analytics is a powerful tool for bringing in that additional data to supplement your voice of the customer surveys. We're not talking about getting rid of those, but we're talking about elevating and advancing those. And then take all that data and analyze it in order to decide what it is that you need to do and to answer questions like, why do customers do what they do? Why do they stay? Why do they leave? what do they do that indicates they'll stay or go, and who should you retain and how to retain those. And those are very segmented, right? Different customer profiles have very different behaviors and very different sensing signals that tell you what they're going to do, and very different requirements in terms of how you, moving to the next one, act in order to keep them. And so, you know, you've got to act, you've got to respond, you've got to engage, and then you also have to drive systematic improvements in your business in order to drive better business results. And then obviously, how do you continuously manage and improve that, both your CX experiences and also your CX capability in the organization, to do this better and better and better, to drive better knowledge of your customer, better knowledge of your business, to deliver better experiences, to get better metrics performance, to get better analysis, to get better action, and right back around, continuously moving in an incredibly aggressive and agile model. And these 7 things aren't just a good idea, they're business as usual today, they're table stakes. And so organizations that don't step up to getting better at these things are not going to be able to retain customers, they're not going to be able to capture that benefit, and they're going to lose their competitive war, whether it's today, tomorrow, or further in the future. So one of the things that we contend, by the way, is that the need to implement this 7-step model against those maturity levels that we talked about before, you know, you can do this today at scale. You can do it without strong CX capabilities. You can do it supported without having the support of an integrated CX technology that evolves as you do, but we don't think you should, right? You shouldn't do that. And the reason we don't think you should do it is because it takes too many resources, and it's way too expensive, and it's way too difficult to improve unless you have a systematic technology-enabled business model that allows you to understand and align with these digital first but not digital only multi-channel customers, and therefore to capture their ongoing business and their loyalty and the benefits that come with that. So we're going to move and we're going to post a quick poll which we would like you to respond to. So basically there's a button, you should have got a little thing to basically say that you've got the poll. And if you can just stop for a couple of minutes, and if you can give us, what are your top 2 of these 5 kind of key business imperatives that you're focused on as a CX professional?
Thanks very much, Graham, for that great introduction and giving us a lot of perspective and things to think about. It's Trent Rossini on the line, and thank you very much for the great attendance today. We are absolutely delighted with the number of people that have come on board. And we think we've got some exciting things to share with you in the work that we're doing with Quba amongst our different client base. So I want to really, what I want to do is just start off by kicking off and giving you an introduction to Quba as a company. We operate in a number of territories, quite strong in the EMEA region, quite strong in the APAC region, specifically Australia and New Zealand, and then working with Graham and his team in terms of work that we're doing in the North American environment. In terms of the areas that we found the most synergy, it really is in financial services and in the insurance area. A number of fairly large organizations that we work with, from banks to insurance companies, a lot of interest in that particular space. We're also very big in the telco space, as well as hospitality and lifestyle, and doing a lot of work in the retail space, particularly fashion retail. We seem to have found a very strong niche in that particular area. So the work that we're doing, I think, has been recognized out there by the analysts. So the likes of Forrester are obviously recognizing the work that we're doing in terms of voice of the customer, but we're equally been recognized in the space of journey analytics and some very exciting things. And today, in fact, we're going to be sharing some of the new developments that we've introduced, and some of the things we're doing in the journey analytics space, which we think is particularly exciting. The purpose for today is really to talk about customer retention and how customer experience management, journey management relate to the subject of customer retention. And as far as it says, customer retention is not a process, is not an event, it's a process, it's ongoing, on an ongoing basis. So Graham spoke about the different levels of the process of retaining customers, and starting off with a traditional level 1, maturing all the way to a very comprehensive prescriptive level at level 4. And if I quickly talk through and give you a sense of the elements that make this up, we start off with the traditional level 1, so that's kind of more the spreadsheet type scenario, a very unsophisticated collection of data within the environment, and then that progresses to a slightly more sophisticated environment in terms of being descriptive and measured and managed. And that's where we start to use the Incuba customer experience model. We start using our structured and unstructured feedback, start looking at case management, single view of the customer. We've got great reports that are very practical to drive into the organization, profiled reports that are specific and fit for purpose, and then using communication nudges to get customers to stay on board. Evolving that to level 3, that's when we start using the journey analytics. So we actually start ingesting data from external systems. We start looking at the interactions of customers by bringing data into the platform. We start producing journey maps. The important point is that they're not manually produced, but rather produced through the assimilation of data, and start looking at patterns of interaction. And in fact, based on those patterns, we're then able to have engagements that are automated based on the interactions of customers, escalating customers that need special attention, and ultimately making sure that these communications are highly personalized based on rules. And then for our really sophisticated customers, and we're doing some really exciting things. I'm going to actually show you some of the stats that we managed to achieve. We've got certain clients that are doing all of the preceding steps, but then are using machine learning to actually determine the most optimal communication at different points, to take those personalized messages, increase the range of messages, and actually optimize them based on machine learning. And that becomes a process that really does way better than your traditional level 1 level of capability. So just to give you a sense of a little bit about the Incuba platform, this is a very high level view of what the platform consists of. Quite a number of components. So the first is obviously our ability to ingest data. And being an analytics and execution platform, you have to have context, and that context comes about through data. And obviously that data takes on a variety of different forms. It potentially is structured data. Some of the data is transactional in nature, some is quite unstructured in nature. And we have native integrations into the likes of Facebook and Twitter and email. What we then do is we assimilate it, and we apply a number of rules to the data that comes in, and we start getting a sense of what's happening from a customer point of view. And that allows us to actually then trigger off surveys and collect insights. And those two aspects really cover the more traditional customer feedback management type solution. But that's not good enough. We think you have to go much further. And what we've done is we've built on those capabilities to introduce the idea of a single view. So any interaction that happens to a customer, we start grouping customers together, or personas of customers, start getting a sense of what's happening in the platform. And we also make use of very advanced text analytics to try and get a sense of where customers are at from an emotional point of view. How are they feeling about interacting with the brand? Is the customer experience working for them? Are they satisfied with the brand? Are they showing intent to stay? Or are they showing intent to leave? We're also able to assimilate the data and actually build up customer journey maps dynamically within the platform. As I said earlier, that's a completely data-driven process. It's not a process that requires manual handcrafting. And then we have a fairly sophisticated case management and feedback system that allows us to take escalations. Escalations could come from journeys that have gone awry. They might come from certain perceptual insights, negativity, for instance, or they might come back, might result from very simple negative feedback that comes out of a survey. And the last element is then the ability to actually nudge individuals through this process by having very specific communications that happen at different points in the customer journey based on the insights and the single view that we have on a particular customer. So I think a lot of customers ask us the question, why are you different? I mean, there are a lot of vendors in the space. Is there something that you're doing? And I think there is. And we've really summarized it to these 8 points, and I'd like to talk through them. So the first is obviously our ability to bring in structured and unstructured data from multiple sources. Not only the ability to do that, but in fact, the ability to do that very easily and effectively. We then can construct real journeys based on the data that has been ingested into the platform. We can measure sentiment either explicitly through asking people questions, alternatively through text analytics. We then unify data, pull together different personas, and create a single view that allows us to understand customers over time. We've got the case management capability that can take feedback and input from any of the other components of the system. And then we've got natively in the platform, we've got this ability to nudge customers forward. And we're doing some really great work in that particular space. We use machine learning, specifically Azure machine learning works very well for us. So using all of this data to put models together and actually determine the most optimal communication. And last and not least, hopefully you'll see that we've really built the platform to be easy to use. The interface we think is very easy to use, and hopefully is certainly far more of a reflection of what a modern customer experience management platform and customer engagement platform should look like. So let me talk through and relate each of those different levels that we spoke about to the capabilities in the platform. And obviously, we're skipping over level 1 because Quba really doesn't have a role to play there. And we're heading into talking about level 2, which is really about having a descriptive, measured, and managed capability. And that really starts off with our customer experience model. Now, one of the things that's quite different about the Quba platform is that we model the customer journey in the platform, and then we associate questions with different parts within the journey. But we also then take unstructured text and we structure that text in order to get a sense of exactly what's going on. And that allows us to then take unstructured comments, organize them, reflect on them, and understand what's happening in the environment. We've also got some very strong reporting capabilities that are integrated into the platform to make sense of these customer journeys. And very importantly, you can always drill down to the underlying data and make sense of it. And we've also got very rich analytics capabilities to make sure that the customer journey can be fully understood. The closed loop feedback system's got SLAs in it. It's got routing in it. It allows us staff to collaborate in servicing customers. It's got filters and search capabilities, and to really make sure that those customers that are not being well looked after are properly managed, and any issues are managed so that some of the business case elements that Graham spoke about are actually realized within the business. And again, this is through pretty easy to use interface. We can actually profile individuals through the single view. We can, for instance, spot customers that are expressing dissatisfaction, and we can act on those and make sure that we actually retain them, again, through the platform, through our case management capability. The results that we've got one particular client, a company called MyWay, using these techniques for all of the customers that they identified at risk, they in fact managed to retain 57% of them. So it talks to the very strong business case that's possible if you put these solutions in place, and allows customers to really get a return on investment front. So let's switch over. I'm going to go straight into the Quba platform, and I really want to give you a sense of a little bit of how this works within the platform itself. So our starting point, we're going to be talking about a fictitious company called Transatlantic. We use it in our demonstrations such as this, obviously confidentiality of data. And what I want to show you here is the high-level customer journey. At the highest level, we've got the brand. Then we start looking at the customer value proposition, such as product and price. And then we drill down into the customer experience. And in this particular case, we're looking at an insurance company. You'll see that individuals are going through purchasing, administering, claiming, renewing, etc. So let's just for the sake of the demonstration, we're going to drill a little bit into the claims environment. And we see, in fact, that we've associated 3 metrics with this particular part of the customer journey, specifically overall satisfaction, customer effort, and resolution time. But you can also see that not only have we defined explicit metrics, but in fact, what we've done is we've defined text analytics queries that are associated with this part of the model. And one of the things that's very powerful within the platform is this ability to construct queries. So there might be very simple queries such as this, where we're looking for words associated with assess or assessment, or communication for argument's sake, and they can get a lot more complex. So we can then have any text that's coming into the platform and actually associate it with that particular part of the customer journey. Some other elements that are quite important in the setup of our model is that we can set goals and assign responsibilities. But probably what you want to be doing is, if you're making use of mechanisms of soliciting feedback, you want to associate some questions with that particular node. And right within the platform, we've actually constructed 2 questions here: the overall satisfaction and the ease of lodging. And we can then start to use these to actually construct questions. You can define your scales within the platform, and you can actually associate it with certain parts of the platform. We even have the ability to collect data and update what we call our CX contacts, which is our single view. So again, the intention is to make this very easy to use, to make it very seamless to use, and then really allow us to connect all the pieces together, rather than simply being a survey-centric platform. So that really talks a little bit to the setup. So obviously this wouldn't be your typical user that is doing the setup on a daily basis, but rather your analyst that we would be working together with. One of the elements that you might have spotted on the customer journey is this block that says customer. And in fact, what we can do is we can actually define a set of queries that we look for a customer. And here what we've done is we actually defined a text query that says, let's look for customers that are at risk, and we've looked for certain terms. So what that allows us to do is, if we get any text that is associated with a customer, we can start to flag that a customer is in fact at risk and start to manage that process from an end-to-end point of view. So let's swap modes and get out of the setup and analyst mode, and let's start looking at how this would feel as a customer experience manager that's using this platform on a daily basis. So I would come in, I would be looking at the data coming into the platform over here, and I can start then to look at the trends over a period of time. I can see, for instance, that our NPS is dropping. So let's drill down, and for instance, maybe let's look from April to say the end of June, and just drill down and see exactly what happened during that period of time, because obviously there's some issues happening in the organization. From the high level view, we start then breaking the model down, and you'll see that the structure that we've just spoken about is now reflected in analytics. So we can see purchasing, we can see administering, we can see claiming, we can see complaining. And I can drill into a certain area, like for instance assessment, and I can start getting a sense of what people are talking about. And let's go and have a look at, for instance, communication. We see a little bit of a blip in the radar here. And what we can do is we can actually go to the underlying items. So we can start looking at Facebook items that are coming in. We start looking at surveys. We see this individual here, Charlotte Weaver. Charlotte obviously is having a bit of a torrid time with Transatlantic. She's answered the survey, and we can see the 23 negative pieces of feedback. And we can actually drill down and go and have a look at specifically what Charlotte is saying. And you can see that she's giving a very negative net promoter score. She's giving a lot of feedback. We see on the right-hand side what's happening in terms of what is her context. So you can see the claim manager that came from the underlying system. We can see, for instance, her mobile number, the type of policy, the region that she's actually come from. Now, what the system's actually done is, given the rules that have been set up, in fact, what it's done is created a case for this individual. And a case is an item that's assigned an individual responsibility for resolution. So we can start working through this, keep notes, and obviously resolve the issue. Now, if I'm the agent that's actually working on the Charlotte case, obviously this incident didn't happen in isolation, and I want to see the broader context. So what I'm able to do is I can actually go into the single view of Charlotte. And what I'm able to do is directly and very seamlessly, I can branch over to a separate part of the system, and I can start looking at the single view of the customer. But in fact, on the right-hand side here, you'll see that there's not one representation of Charlotte, but in fact multiple. And what has happened is the platform has started to associate slightly different definitions of Charlotte, fragments of Charlotte, and pull them together into one integrated view in terms of what's happening in Charlotte's world. I can use that in a variety of different ways. So for argument's sake, I can then go and look at the text analytics view. So the text analytics that we looked at earlier, I can start looking at it at an individual level. And in fact, what we see here is that Charlotte, who's expressed a comment that says your company lacks professionalism and there was a problem with the claims process, has been flagged at risk. And that means that there's a flag that now has been set against that particular individual, and the system starts to know that this particular customer is at risk. I can go further. I can start looking at the activities, and I can see that claims have come in and there's some renewals that are happening. So this is a transactional view of the world. These transactions will become quite important in the construction of our customer journey map, which we're going to look at a little bit later on. But I can also look at interactions that are actually happening within the system. I can start seeing that emails have been sent out, and there's some Twitter comments that have happened, and that we've sent some surveys related to purchasing. And I can talk directly to Charlotte, and I can start understanding exactly what conversations have had been had. I can talk to her directly from within the platform, and if someone else has been having a conversation, all of that is kept together so I can see what's going on. So that gives you a sense of how we can manage individual cases. Let me give you a sense of how that then manifests from an analytics point of view. So we take all of this data, we pull it in across not just one customer, but in fact across thousands of customers, and we can start to understand the customer journey and where the issues are. So we, for instance, can see that there's an issue in the claims environment, and we can start to see exactly what the issues are, what comments are coming out over a period of time. We might actually want to take this a step further and actually start to see what is the relationship between, for instance, detractors at the top, passive, and then promoters. And we can actually see that obviously the detractors are staying a shorter period of time as opposed to promoters that are there for a far longer period of time. So we start to see the relationship between the attitude of customers and their longevity with the organization, because we're bringing in the data that's coming from the underlying systems, and we know how long the individuals been on in the environment. So all of these tools can then be used to manage customers that potentially are at risk. We can intervene. We can look at the customers that are at risk. We've also got this capability, our list capability, and this is really a filter capability. So for instance, if we want to look at all customers with a poor net promoter score, we're able to filter those items out. And now we can see an aggregate of all customers that fit into that category, and we can start to act and interact with them and direct these into the case management capability. So that really is a good sense, hopefully gives you a good sense of what we're able to do at a level 2 in terms of some of the base capabilities. And that's a really good start, but it's potentially not enough. And that really takes us to level 3, which is now having this ability to do a far more comprehensive and systematic pulling together of data. And to really explain this, I want to kick off and just start talking about customer journeys. So customer journeys really is the beginning, putting together of information, multiple elements of information over a period of time to understand customer journey paths. And what we're able to then do is start understanding customers and start understanding their goals and getting a sense of how they're navigating through the organization. And that gives us a whole lot of advantages over a traditional voice of customer solution. The first is that you're looking at all customers, so it's not sample based. Obviously, responses to surveys are very much sample orientated. You can start seeing the steps involved. You can start looking at the paths. You can look at dead ends. You can see where customers are going around in circles and loops. And you can start to understand the interactions that customers are having and actually nudge them on a real-time basis. Now, the question is obviously practically, how do you do that? And it really starts off with this ability to ingest data. And there's two kinds of transactions that we support within the Incuba platform. The one is to actually take in data from external systems, and we actually map in transactions. So for instance, the example I'm going to show you is related to a credit card application. Or alternatively, to start mapping elements such as feedback, tweets, or alternatively, what we call an expired transaction. So this is a special kind of transaction that's defined in the system. And what that actually does is it allows us to identify when something didn't happen. So basically, there was an action and then there was a period of time, and that's very useful because it actually can serve as a trigger to the environment. So we've got a very strong capability to actually be able to ingest data, bring that into the system, and also to map then elements of the customer journey to really make sense of it. To make this work, what you need is you need a single view of customer, because obviously, as I mentioned earlier, Charlotte might have multiple personalities or representations or personas. You need to link those through, and data can be coming from your external CRM system. Typically, we are the slave to an external system that's the master. We could have interactions that are happening, transactions that are coming from underlying line of business systems or workflow systems, or we could have social media posts. And what we actually do is we pull all of that together and we start creating this unified view of the customer. We've also got a direct integration into a third party that allows us to do lookups of social profiles. So you simply give us the email address, and then through the system, we can actually go and collect the social profile, and that allows us to link together then what we know about the customer with, for instance, Facebook and Twitter. That allows us to pull together the customer journey. So what I want to do is really show you this in action. And again, I'm going to go back to the actual platform itself and start to show you how all of these elements come together. So we're going to start off and just very quickly show you that we can define transactions within the system. So for instance, we've got a credit card approval. We define that within the system. We define elements such as the transaction ID, as well as the date, as well as the contact ID, because obviously we need to know the individual involved. And then we have the ability to actually have an expiration. So this particular transaction, for instance, expires after 10 minutes. You typically make that for a longer period of time. What we can also do is that really defines a destination path for a piece of information. But what we need to do is we need to automate the ingestion of that data. And that's where our integration wizard comes into play. And this really allows us to get external data, bring it into the system, do transformations, and manage that data, and then map that to a particular location. And in this particular case, we're actually mapping that to a transaction that says that's related to the credit card application. So how all of that data then comes together is that we can then construct a customer journey path. So let's just zoom back over a period of time, and we start looking at a customer journey path. We're starting off on the left-hand side, and we know in this particular scenario within Transatlantic that we had 1,679 applications for a credit card, but then we had a split. We had 1,266 of those that were approved, and obviously we had 413 that were declined. So that was based on the credit rating of this particular financial institution. Then of those 1,266, we had a subset, 797, then that accepted the card. And what we did is we actually triggered off a communication from within the platform to promote spend. Of those people, we can see that the vast majority, so 624, then clicked on the link. And in fact, we then completed the loop by seeing that 355 of those, in fact, spent money because we've linked that back to transactional information. So it gives you a sense, and again, I really want to emphasize a point. This is not hand-drawn. This is generated from data. So let's start thinking about customer experience management. And the first question is, well, how do things look different for promoters and detractors? Well, we can do that within the platform. Pretty easy to do. We're just going to compare two different filters that we can define within the platform. So we're going to define over the last month that we're going to look at some data related to promoters and detractors. Very easy to do. We can apply those filters. And now what we're going to do is we're going to start getting a sense of how the journey paths differ for these different customers. And we can start to see that our promoters, which are in orange, are following the path of spending money, whereas opposed to our detractors, obviously a smaller proportion, they are very unhappy and they're declining due to issues of interest rates or fees or customer efforts. Even though we're putting revised offers out there, some of them are coming back, but the vast majority of them are not, in fact, doing that. So you can see that using the profile of the customer, we can draw up the journey path. This is fantastic, and hopefully you can see a lot of advantage, but again, it's not enough. And really what we want to do is we want to now start saying, but what happens if a customer goes along a particular journey path? And what we can do is we can actually select a journey path. So let's just say that we want to select customers that applied for a credit card, that then went through the process of selecting an offer. And what we can then do is we can actually create a target audience rule, and we can actually define a rule which we can then use. So we can say all customers that were provided an offer. And we can apply this either to historical audiences, so people that went through that path in the past, or as new data is fed into the system, we can apply a rule for any new customers that meet that particular criteria. What we can also do is, you'll remember the list functionality, which is a list of customers that people in the organization are going to act on. We can run rules within that environment, and we can route those to a particular individual, and we can add additional criteria to it. So for instance, we can look at certain text analytics and look at certain channels associated with it. Where that then becomes useful is that we can start to construct engagements. And what we're going to do, obviously, given the time available, we've actually pre-constructed a particular communication. And what we're going to look at is, we're going to look at one of the communications that's been put together. This is a communication actually that drives people to spend. And we actually predefined a customer journey path. So in this case, we're looking at credit card application, credit card approvals, and accepting the offer. And we're looking at a history of the last 180 days. Within the platform itself, you can then construct an actual message that is now going to prompt to get people to actually spend. And should anyone follow that particular journey path, they immediately will be sent this particular email, and we can then keep track of whether they opened that email, whether they took advantage, and whether the spend happened within the platform itself. The question obviously is, how effective is this? And I actually want to show you some data from a client that we've been working with for a period of time. There are two lines within this graph that should be significant in what we look at. So you'll see a dark brown line where we're looking at credit card activation. We're getting 1.86% and 1.5%. But that specifically is for an audience where there's been no intervention. And then we have a separate cohort of customers where we have had an intervention. That's in the brighter orange. And we can start to see that the credit card activation has gone up to 3.87%, and initiated spend has gone up to 2.97%. Now that is a significant step forward. We basically doubled the ability to drive behavior in the environment. I really want to finish off and talk very briefly about the work that we're doing with machine learning. So we've spoken at length about descriptive analytics, but ultimately our more sophisticated clients are then using this together with machine learning. And one of the things that you'd know about machine learning, if you've been exposed to the space, is that the collection of data and the execution is almost as important as the modeling. And that's where the Quba platform is particularly strong. So we take data from the platform, we feed it into machine learning, and then what we do is we use event triggers from that underlying system to send out very, very personalized communications into the environment. And that allows us to then be very clear on exactly what action to take for different customers. And we can have very specific actions and very specific reports that are driven out within the environment. So I think we're really down to the last couple of minutes, and I just want to wrap up there and just see if we've got any questions coming on the line. I do understand that there are a number of questions that potentially have come through, and we can use the very limited time we've got left to answer those questions.
Great, thanks, Trent. Hi, this is Anthony here. I'm the admin on this webinar, and I've just been marshalling the questions. We are short on time, so apologies if we go over a couple of minutes. If we don't get to your question, I'll make sure that you're contacted. And we actually have a response for you. But we have some great questions, so I'm going to put these on the table for the panelists. You should be unmuted. But here's our first question from John. John, thank you for the question. We spoke about personas previously. Are personas discovered and categorized based on behaviors or other data, or are they manually defined or configured, or is it some combination of both?
So the short answer is a combination of both, and maybe just to elaborate on that. If you have a segmentation model within the organization, and that's an attribute that's kept against the CX contact, we're able to identify a customer fitting into a segment. Very often what we want to do is we want to understand the relationship between a persona and behavior, and that's where we'd actually run a clustering algorithm on the customer, feed that into, again, the machine learning capabilities that do the clustering on an automatic basis, and then use that as a basis to look at different cohorts of customers and target different communications and see how those personas of customers respond as a function of the particular communication. So that that feedback loop then happens into the machine learning, and we can then optimize the effectiveness of the communication.
Great, thanks, Trent. Graham, anything you want to add, or can I move on to the next one?
I think the only thing I would add is that's the technology component. While we believe that this new world that we're entering is impossible without technology, we also believe technology is necessary but not sufficient. So, one of the important elements is there's human perception that's going to get brought to that understanding of a persona and how your personas link to your segments within your business model. And so while journey analytics and while other technologies, including your CRM systems, Salesforce, MS Dynamics, all of which we integrate with, are going to inform your definition of a persona and segment. It's to the question, right? It's a combination of the above at the end of the day.
Great, thanks, Graham. Here's a question from Lisa. Thanks, Lisa, for the question. We use Salesforce for CRM and various other marketing automation tools today. And they say that they can do all of this. So why do we need to consider anything else?
Can I answer that? Maybe take a first shot at that. So the answer is because they can't. They can do pieces of it. We're huge Salesforce fans. We're huge MS Dynamics fans. We're huge Adobe Marketing Cloud fans. And in fact, we integrate with all of those tools because we recognize that leading edge enterprises have those tools to deliver experiences. But they only do a small piece of what we do, and we do a small piece of what they do. So, the idea that maybe Salesforce is going to do this, or Adobe is going to do this, or Microsoft is going to do that, that's the future. But actually delivering business results today, we overlap in terms of those capabilities, and the companies that we're working with that are leading their industries are integrating Incuba's platforms with those other platforms in order to deliver the experiences they need to.
Yeah, maybe just adding to what Graham said is, in many respects, traditional CRM systems are inside out type of focus. So they're very much focused on the transactional element, the objectives of the company. There was a focus on a lot on data integrity. We take a slightly different view. We're very much outside in. And we take a view that if we have data, that's great. If we don't, there's a gap. And some data is better than no data. So practically, we start understanding personas, we start understanding attitudes, we start understanding the attitudinal element of the customer. So as Graham says, there's an interface and an interaction point, but fundamentally there are different solutions that converge. And as I said earlier, from a technical point of view, often the master is the CRM system. So it's Microsoft Dynamics or the Salesforce.
Great, thanks, Trent. I want to just put one more question on the table, and then perhaps, Graham, you can close for us after that. But the question is, it seems very complicated and requires a lot of resources, which we don't have. What's really required to set this up?
Maybe I can start with that, which is also part of the close. So number one is do something, right? I mean, so find something specific which has validity to your business and some kind of interest, especially from your business executives. Having been in the customer experience industry for about 17, 18 years, the one thing we know is that when you have the criticality, the size, the scale, the complexity that exists today to really deliver these systematic, predictable results, you just can't do it without technology. So, we would say find a pilot, find a use case, whatever words you want to use, find a business case to attach to, start small, demonstrate that this is a new world. It's a new world of managing business, and it's a new world in the CX industry. And then, of course, the real answer is call us, and we'll get you started, because we believe that if you are going to win your competitive war in the financial service industry, you've got no choice. And part of the reason we're here is to help you win, and the people who are not on this call and the people who are not engaged with us are going to be the losers. So we suggest you join the winners and give us a call.
Yeah, I think just from maybe more from a technology point of view and adding to what Graham said, I also would really like to emphasize the ease of integration. So we take a very light integration approach. We realize that IT departments have a backlog of work. They've got priorities, and systems development with external systems is just something that's never going to hit the priority list. And for that reason, we put a lot of focus in making sure that getting data into our platform is very easy. We use wizards, and we have a loose coupling that allows us to be very effective in collecting insights, but not to create a massive technical project that's going to take many months. In fact, most of the projects we're rolling out in terms of that first phase that Graham spoke about, we aim to do somewhere between 14 and 16 weeks. That's pretty much our benchmark for getting business success delivered to an organization.
Great. Yeah. So just to kind of recap, right? We live in a world where we've won the CX awareness war in the C-suite. I think every C executive will most believe that CX is important. They've heard the powerful business cases, but we're seeing a real problem in moving to action and moving to investment. And one of the main reasons for that we've discovered in our conversations with C-suite executives is that they just can't see how they can predict what the ROI is going to be and how they apply it to their business. So we think the industry we're in has no choice but to turn this from a CX art of random techniques applied selectively in organizations, however good they may be, using manual processes or manual tools or even some basic tools like Excel spreadsheets. We think it needs to be moved to the next level to become a predictable, a systematic, technology-enabled, continuous improvement, measurement instrumented capability in an organization that senior executives can know that if they stick $1 million or £1 million or £1 million yen or $50,000 or £50,000 or 50,000 yen in the front end of this process, they're going to get X benefit out the back end, and they can clearly track exactly what the impacts are of that. And the more we can do that as an industry, the more we can turn this into a repeatable process that's continuously improvable, the more money is going to be funneled, the more resources that will be funneled for us to deliver what we're really all about, which is the experiences for our customers and for your customers that ultimately are differentiated and winning in your industry.
Thanks, Graham, and thank you everyone else that contributed to the session today. Thank you for the attendees, and we look forward to engaging with you further.